Good day. Welcome to a BW Business World Dialogue. All of us want to grow in life. All of us want to evolve. All of us want to be a new me every year. As we step into 2026, I'm sure a lot of us are thinking about pivoting, of growing, of finding a new normal within ourselves and becoming a new person with new skills, new responsibilities. And we have a guest who's giving us a playbook to do that. Today's BW Business World Dialogue is with Mr. Harit Nagpal on his latest book called Pivot. Hopefully post the dialogue you'll know how to pivot. And I love the line, between two options, pick the third. We'll figure out which is the third option. Harit, congrats on your second book.
Thank you.
Your first book, Adapt to Thrive, not just survive, did well. But when I got the book, Harit, I really, as an entrepreneur, after going through a couple of pages, thought, it's God's way of sending such a book to me and saying, Anurag, you should pivot. And then once I started reading it, you talk about Neil, and he said, Neil could be me. So is this book about you?
Well, yeah, yes and no. The book started off by being me, because there was pressure on me to write a biography or whatever, autobiography. And I said, look, I'm not Chandragupta Maurya that I would write an autobiography of my own. I didn't want to write an autobiography, frankly. But then I said, okay, let me give it another name and write it under another name. That also gives me an opportunity to put in some masala which is not true. And also, when you're writing something about your life story, there are other people involved. Some are good, some are not so good. So if you want to bring in some not so good elements also, and if it is not about me, then I can slip in those incidents without referring to those people. So yeah, it is my story, my life story really, but it's 70 to 80% my life story, 30% is masala, which 30% I won't tell you.
We live in an era of chat GPT or generative AI, and I keep saying that if you want the best answers, you have to ask the best questions. You have to be evolved enough to be able to ask the best questions. The prompts have to be better. Your book seems to be like a workbook. It's like a coach. It's asking you questions in every chapter. So give us a sense of why have you taken this methodology to write this book?
There are two reasons for that really. There's a new format really. After every 2 odd pages, at every turning, there is a question that I've asked and given space for about 5-6 lines after that to write your answers in there, which is why I start by saying that arm yourself with a pencil before you start reading this book. 2 reasons. One, attention spans have gone down. In the T20, Reels, Instagram era, people's attention spans are lower. When you see a 400-page book, you say, oh shit, I've got to read all of it. Mere se nahi hoga. So we've given it some breaks. Secondly, anytime you're reading, at some juncture at every 2, 3, 4, 5 pages, if something strikes you, you start reflecting on your own journey or your own life or incidents that have happened in your life. I've made it easy for you by asking those questions instead of you having to think of those questions.
Brilliant. Now let me ask, is there a playbook to pivot? Of course, someone who reads the book will answer the questions, get to somewhere. So if you had to sum up, is there a playbook, and what would be that playbook?
If you were to summarize in 2 or 3 big bullets, the first ingredient for pivoting is optimism. You've got to be hopeful. You've got to have some amount of hope that, yeah, things can be better than what they are today. Sure. So if you start with optimism, that's the first step. Second, you need to have the courage to question. Very often what happens is you want to try something new in the hope of doing something, and people around you say, but this is not the way we do things. And you follow the pagdandi that's been walked by so many people before that and say, हाँ चलो यहाँ ऐसा होता है हम भी ऐसा ही करेंगे. That's the juncture where you need to have the courage and say, so or so what, and question the tradition. And that's where pivot. So it's a combination of optimism and courage that helps you to pivot.
Brilliant. Now, I love the kind of subtext of the book. It says between 2 options, pick the third. Is your maths weak or my maths weak?
No, this is not about maths really. This is really logic. There are many incidents, you know. If you go through history, if human beings had just looked at lightning and continued to look at lightning and not got inspired by that and invent fire, then you and I would have been eating uncooked food like the cows and the buffaloes, and would have been not been warm, would have lived in the cold. Or somebody had not seen a stone fall down the hill and not invented the wheel, we wouldn't have moved. Somebody had not had the courage to fly, and it took 10 centuries for human beings to learn to fly. The first aeroplane, first attempt to the Wright brothers was almost 10 centuries long. If we hadn't done that, you and I wouldn't have been sitting in this room together just now. And many other things, concrete, penicillin, nylon, internet, Google, AI, I mean, all these are inventions. So if you hadn't had that courage, you wouldn't have progressed.
Beautiful. So it's about looking at things in a new way, right?
Yeah, I'll give you an example. You know, when COVID got over, just for the lark, I went to an acting school over the weekends to just check my hand out as to learn the acting process. And the first thing they made you do there was, okay, just repeat a dialogue from a film. So somebody gets up and does an Amitabh Bachchan, somebody gets up and does a Rajesh Khanna or a Dilip Kumar or whatever was his favorite.
Now you say that if everybody copied the old actors, there wouldn't be a new Tom Hanks and so on and so forth.
That's there in the book. So essentially we would have had today, if Rajesh Khanna had copied Dilip Kumar and Amitabh Bachchan had copied Rajesh Khanna and Amir Khan or Shah Rukh Khan had copied the predecessor, we would have had a seventh duplicate copy of Dilip Kumar today. And so things wouldn't have progressed, and that's exactly what happens in an organization also. I keep looking at my boss and keep getting inspired by him, and when my boss goes out, I sit in his chair and start working like that, my boss. Would the organization progress? If I keep choosing the options that were used by people before, the two options that were generated before, and don't go for the third, or don't have the courage to experiment with the third, there would be no progress. So from inventing the fire to the wheel to the internet, to the AI, or to opportunities every day in your life, if you don't go for a new option, the third option, which has not been tried before, we won't progress.
And you know, as you said right at upfront, that it's also about you. Neil could be you, as you say in the book.
Yes.
And now you said on camera that there are parts in the book which represent your journey. What was your pivoting moment?
I don't think, see, we make such a big deal about pivoting, they say, एक बड़ा pivot करेंगे. I don't believe pivoting is about one big wheel that you have to turn.
But it's the power of compounding of small
It's the compounding. It's in every decision, if you are optimistic and have the gumption or courage to ask, so what? Then you can pivot many times a day, every day, on even the smallest of decisions, and they all add up. So I don't think, if I was to think back on the 64 years of my life, was there that one moment that changed my life or career or direction or trajectory? I don't think I can point out to that one moment. And you know, strangely what happened was, I also did not discover it when I started writing this book. I was about 3/4 into the book when I saw a pattern in my life. I said, at every juncture, this fellow called Neil has taken the option that did not exist, or was a courageous option, or was different from what his predecessor had done, whether it was at school, college, jobs, life, whatever. And it helped.
It has worked out.
At least it's worked out. So it's an everyday thing.
Now, again, you know, you've tried to structure the book in 4 chapters. What do you want to be? Or rather, what do you want to be, right? Who do you want to be? Is there a difference between what you want to be and who you want to be?
Well, to put it differently, I would say each one of us has got a to-do list in our days. A daily to-do list, a weekly to-do list, a monthly to-do list. There's not anybody I've seen who doesn't have a to-do list. There are very few people who have a to-be list. And it's important for us to have a to-be list, whether you're a person or an organization or a company or a firm, whatever you are. If you have a to-be list, then actually sets up a very higher order goal for everybody in the place, even for yourself, and you're working towards it in a collaborative manner, in a cohesive manner to go there, to get there. So, for example, I want to sell these many pieces of what I sell in a month or in a year, or I want to have the highest market share, or I want to be known as the best, as the most loved brand by the customers. Now, the most loved brand is a to be. To sell these many pieces of what I sell is a to do. If you move the what do you want to be from what you want to do, that changes the whole perspective.
Sure. I would add one more is what not to be.
Well,
But automatically it comes.
So
what not to do.
That's
what
a very
not
simple way of strategizing. Whatever you don't want to do, take it out, or you don't want to be, take it out, and the rest, what is left over, is strategy.
So second section in the book or a chapter is what will you learn? And there is a old saying that you earn what you learn, right? Give us a sense of why this chapter and what's the gist of the chapter. We'll come to the question.
Two parts to it. I was completely foxed by what used to happen in our times. And you see, we grew up in an era where choices were limited. So you either became a doctor, an engineer, a CA, or you did liberal arts. And I thought things would have changed, because then the person who got the highest marks would go in for medicine or engineering and CA, and the others would do liberal arts, largely, by and large. I thought things would have changed. I went and asked people, youngsters today, कि अभी भी ऐसा होता है क्या? And I was surprised to see that's exactly how it is done. Now, whether I have the aptitude to go in for medicine and engineering,
I don't know.
I don't know. But because I've got high marks and I'm good at studies.
And my father wants me, as you say.
And my father wants me to be a doctor.
And when everybody asks and he says, yes, I want to be, the father is happy, everyone is happy.
There you are. So that was one part, really, that provoked me.
Conforming to existing norms.
What do you want to be?
And what will you do?
And then what will you do?
Right.
So what jobs will you do? So is there, see, I interview a lot of people as part of my job, and I see people who got a structure to their career. They've made specific moves at the right times in their lives, either within the company into functions or into another business, another industry. And there are others who are rolling along. So what do you want to do to reach where you want to get to? If you decide that pattern, it helps. You pivot. Or if you're rolling around every 3 years, 4 years into another role, another job, doesn't help. Then your success is accidental and not programmed.
And then the last chapter is about how do you stay at the peak for long.
That's the most difficult part.
Yeah, and how do you define the peak? Do you really know it's the peak, or you can do better?
Sure, there is no peak. There is no real peak, because the moment you reach a peak, a new peak emerges.
Yeah, the bottom of one mountain.
Yes.
Is the top of another mountain.
The
top of another mountain is the bottom
of another next mountain. So there is nothing called a peak, especially as lifespans are prolonging. There is nothing called a peak. Gone are the days when our parents used to finish 58, leave their jobs and go retire in the village. I don't think that's happening to anybody in the current times. So there is nothing called a peak, and you can't stay at the same place for long, because either they will kick you out or you will get bored of it. So life is about constant innovation, constant pivoting.
Absolutely. Now, when I started reading the book, I thought it's relevant for me. I want to read it one more time from a point of actually answering those questions, right? So who is this book for? Is it for an entry-level executive? Is it for a mid-level executive? Or is it for a B school student? Is it for an entrepreneur? Who is this book for?
I better have a good answer for that, because in my previous book, the first chapter was about segmentation, and I had said very clearly, you better know who your customers are, and you should know also who your customers are not. That's how that book started, the previous one. So I better know who my customers are for this book. Yes, I had originally thought that this book's core audience is going to be young managers who are just stepping into their life, and it'll help them a lot. So that's the core segment that I had. But I'm actually very surprised. It's been about 4 weeks since the book has been launched, and I've got calls from about 6 of my friends who, after reading the book, have said, I am passing it on to my kid, who's anywhere between 11 and 20, saying, I want him or her to read this also. So there's a new segment that's emerging. There's new opportunity.
Because that's where they're thinking about their careers and the career choices that you later talk
or
about.
life choices, I would say. You know, when you're going to a college, what do you make of that college? What is that? What is those 3 or 4 years or 5 years that you spend in a college? What do you want to do in that period? You want to go deep or you want to go wide? That's a call you want to take. And that's been described in a full chapter here as to what happened to Neil in college and what did he do differently in college, different from what the students of that era were doing.
Now let's dive deep in the book and the chapters and the questions you raised in the chapter. In the book, you say Neil has lived within you, and Pivot has helped you discover a pattern of how one progresses in life. How to spot these patterns? Of course, asking the questions that you asked, but I was thinking about how my life has panned out. I mean, I don't come from media. I went to engineering school, went to a business school, got into media accidentally, and there I am, 26th year of doing what I do. So, like there is a question, was there a profession you wanted to follow growing up? What inspired you to think this way? Now, we don't ask that question. When you ask this question to yourself, what was the answer you got?
I don't think anybody knew what he wanted to be at the age of 60 when he was 16. Impossible. Opportunities come your way, and what you make of them and what you don't make of them decide what you're going to be at the age of 60, between 16 and 60. But yeah, if you consciously, when you are at crossroads at any point in time on the way, and you pick the options that suit you at that point in time, or that at least in the near future look like differentiating, that helps. There are no answers, there are no right answers to this, but a series of these pivots along the way from the time you enter school to college to first job, second job, third job, moving industries, moving roles, you can pivot your career. Some of us have. Life was kind, opportunities came, but yeah, we also took the calls.
And how do you align traits to a certain profession?
There are scientific ways that are available today. I did not use any of those, frankly. But yeah, there was some pivot. For example, let me look at it this way. In my 40 years of career, there has been a movement. In the sense, I started with cosmetics, less penetration, limited market, high end. My next move, every next move was to a category which was more widely distributed, little more complex than the previous one. So complexity increased, audiences got wider. And then I pivoted to services. The first half of my career was on physically delivered goods, which are slow to move. The second half of my life was on virtually delivered goods, not physically delivered, where the time between an action and response is very small. You can make a change today and things move fast. So I can say in my 40 years, I've moved from limited distribution to wider distribution, slow moving to fast moving to very fast moving categories. And there has been a pattern to that. You can choose your pattern.
Sure. Now, you also talk about the fact that, you say that, do you remember a time that you took a contrarian stand which startled everybody? And what was it about and how did it make you feel? That's the question you ask.
I do that every day. I'm known for that. In fact, now people around me have stopped saying, but Harit, you said something contrary just the other day. Now they got used to the fact that whatever he says 3 days later, he can change his mind. But why should you not change your mind? Because situation has changed. And I read very early, it's a very famous quote, that if you haven't changed your mind in the last 1 week, check your pulse, you may be dead. And I think some of us have been living to that adage really all our lives. Because situation around you is changing so rapidly. If your response is going to be what you thought 1 week ago, then you're dead.
So, and how do you see this book is about careers in some way, right? It's about
Life as such, career is a part of it.
yes. So, how do you sometimes, as you said, career choices are by default, right? How do you make sure that when you're working, how do you take stakeholders along for new choices that may not be visible to you or to them? I mean, they just got visible to you because of your insight into a process or being in the front line or thinking. How do you make sure you bring stakeholders together?
That's the process of alignment, and storytelling helps there very well. The whole, to me, storytelling is about you know where you are and you know where you got to go. But the other person you're trying to convince, he's not where you are. So you have to first determine where is he, and then take him from where he is to where you want him to go, not from where you are to where you want to go. So you have to understand where that person is, and stakeholders need to be aligned. There's no two ways about it.
Sure. Now, in the chapter, What Will You Do? You ask this question. Have you faced a situation where the reality turned out to be opposite of the expectations you had, pleasantly, unpleasantly? How do you respond to a situation like this?
In a hyper competitive business which is highly regulated, you face this every morning. And where technology is changing every year, this is a situation you face every morning. You don't have a choice. So you have to collect yourself together and say, this is what it is. There are things I can impact, there are things I cannot impact. So let's worry about the things I can impact or influence and start working on them. And things that I cannot impact are out of my control. I can only be concerned about them. Just leave them aside. Let's work with what we have and what we can impact.
Brilliant. Now, how does one stay at the peak for a long time? And again, is there a playbook? Of course, by pivoting every now and then you can stay there.
Yeah, it's only about reassessing the situation every morning and having a response for that. But having a higher order goal, like for example, I said, I want to be the most loved brand in the category, yet profitable. Now, if that is the higher order goal that you have up there, then you will create teams, you will create processes, you will create a culture which will take you there.
So, you end the book by asking, what should Neil do? That's an existential question all of us face very often, okay? In various situations, as you say, technology is making sure certain ways of doing business are redundant, the new platforms, the workforce, the way young people think is different, the choices they have. So, how do we answer these existential
So, that's not a unique question at the end of the book. That's a question probably has been asked 60 times during the book.
in different ways?
In different ways. So, in a sense, it's a continuum of what has happened through the book. And I am today, frankly, sitting at a crossroads where I'll be 65, end of 26. I have to decide where do I want to go.
Private equity?
Yeah, so private equity, sit on a few boards,
Teach.
So those are the options in front of me. As of now, I'm veering towards teaching. I've already started teaching in a couple of places. I do about 5 hours every Saturday in an institute teaching full-time courses. That's like my experimentation with the world of teaching and students, saying, can I give back what I've got to people who want to learn? Or do I want to go and teach people who already know?
Sure.
So between the two,
But mentoring.
mentoring is
You
what I'm
investing
looking
in
at.
startups and so on and so forth.
Yeah, so that's the dilemma I have in front of me. Neil has in front of him at this point in time.
I'm sure a lot of senior executives who are at the peaks of their careers have the same dilemma.
That's right.
But when I was reading your book, Pivot, I also thought of that we know what we know, we don't know what we don't know, but we don't even know what we don't know because we don't ask the questions. So how does one figure out what we don't know?
By asking So, by challenging the current situation, so by challenging the status quo and saying, so what? I mean, because we've forgotten, a lot of us have forgotten to challenge the current situation. That Bhagwan or whatever that movie was, there was another movie where Mr. Bachchan has that dialogue of Pratishtha, Parampara, whatever, Anushashan and whatever. We just, कि हमारे यहाँ ऐसा नहीं होता है. We don't do this and we don't challenge that. Unless we don't challenge that, how will things change?
Okay, let me ask you this another way. Today, the choices available are huge.
Yeah.
Even to somebody like you who's at the peak of his career, you yourself laid out 4 choices: private equity, to mentor startups, to teach,
Get on boards.
or be on boards, or do a bit of all. Is having too many choices is a problem today, or is it a good thing? It's a good thing.
I think it's a good thing because, like we were talking about at the stage of education also, you either became a doctor, an engineer, a CA, or did arts. Today, people are dropping out of college to start things on their own. There are social media influencers who are doing well in life. People went into hotel management as some of my friends are doing very well in hotels, but it wasn't the first choice that most people exercised. Today, it is the first choice that some people are exercising, even when they can get into medical colleges and engineering colleges. So the options are many, and I think it's a good thing. You need to experiment with some of them, find out if they're good for you, and move on.
Can this book pivot replace a coach or a mentor?
I don't think I would. It could be a step towards that.
Right.
It could be a step towards opening your thought process to being hopeful and asking the tough questions.
And you said a couple of people have read the book. Give us some of the responses or reactions to the book that you got.
Like I said, you yourself said that I wish I had read it 30 years before. A few of my friends have said that. People like the format, which is like short breaks, questions, thought-provoking, things like that. But the best response, like I said earlier, is people wanting to offer it to their children for them to read.
So that the thought process starts early. Right. And it may help. My last question to you, you wrote the last book. How is it different from writing the last book? Of course, you talked about that attention spans are getting smaller and smaller, shorter and shorter. Hence, you got to write a book which is, kind of breaks down things and keeps you interested before it brings another new angle. So, of course, that is very evident. Beyond that, what has been the difference?
Pivot helped me discover myself. There was a pattern to my life which I did not know, why I myself wasn't aware of that pattern. While writing this, it helped me discover myself. And then I molded it in such a manner that it becomes a platform to help other people also discover themselves, their own way.
And though it's not in the book, but I'll ask you this question. See, you were a CMO of a very large enterprise, right? And you became a CEO, and you have been a very successful CEO, very entrepreneurial, starting businesses, making them work, especially media and technology have moved at such a fast pace that not everyone in the segment has kept pace, and you have really kept pace. So is there a playbook for CMOs to be CEOs?
Logically, the person who's got the first right to be a CEO in an organization is the CMO. Because he knows the customer, and so CMO has got really the creative side, that customer knowledge side, and the commercial side to him. I've called a CMO an Ardhanarishwar. The creative and the commercial, it's a combination of these two. And that's exactly what is at the center of a P&L, really. So the CMOs have got the first right to be the CEO in an organization. And which is why most CEOs come from the sales and marketing stream, more than other functions in most consumer marketing organizations. So, yeah, the CMO really, like I said, needs to inculcate both sides of his brain, the creative side and the commercial side. to become a good CEO. And life has changed. Technology has helped a lot along the way. When we started with calculators, then came the Excel sheets, then came the macros, and then came the analytic tools. And today we're sitting at the verge of AI. And a CMO we used to spend a lot of time getting the data together and analyzing it, and had very little time to implement things. Today's CMOs, the data gathering and analytics is taking such little time that they have a lot of time to use that data and the outcome of that analysis to start getting into the impacting the market and impacting the customer part of life. So they can do both ends more efficiently than the people in the past could do.
Brilliant. Thank you, Harit, for talking to us.
Pleasure.
And I'm sure Pivot will help lots of CEOs to pivot, or CEOs in waiting. It will help entrepreneurs to pivot in their business, and also help middle managers to be able to find a career path that they can find fulfilling and become the best version of themselves, because they would have answered some of the questions in the book, which are very, very real. And as I said, when I started reading a book, I said I wish I'd read the book earlier. So I'm sure this is a book that will do well, gain word of mouth. I would definitely recommend you to read it, especially if you're somebody who wants to be a high performance manager, whether you're a CEO, CMO. It will help you ask the basic questions, and then serendipity and the universe takes over.
Thank you. Thanks, Anurag. Thank you very much.